and welcome back to the Self-Service Podcast. Today, I have a very special guest in her greenhouse, Isabel. Welcome to Self-Service.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you so much for joining. I've been so excited to hear more about your story and get to know you better. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Well, it's an honour to be here, and I hope I do you justice.
I'm loving the background. Could you tell us about where you are right now?
Yes, I'm at my flower farm in Overton, which is in Hampshire. It's near Basingstoke, and I'm in my greenhouse, and I currently have probably like thousands of seedlings in here. I would do a tour, but it's a bit awkward because you're on a laptop. But yeah, I'm starting so many seeds at the moment for my flower farm. I grow cut flowers and I sell them as bouquets. So that's where I'm at. It's all going on in here.
Amazing. And we're going to share with our listeners, the journey along the way to where you are at now. So I'm so excited to kind of get stuck in and hear about that and how you've got here. But firstly, could you tell us a bit about you and maybe a bit about your background?
Yes, so I'm 26 and I'm originally from London. I grew up in West London and I ended up moving out to Hampshire. It was like 2021. My boyfriend George's family took me in because I was having some problems with my family. So I came out to live here and I love it. I feel completely at home. It's completely different to living in London, but I feel like I'm meant to be here. And I have a gardening business, so I'm a self-employed gardener, which I do almost full time, but my real passion is my flower farm and growing flowers. So I just spend all my time doing some form of gardening. Yes.
Love that. To be doing something that you enjoy as your work must feel so good.
It does. It feels amazing. Particularly the flower farm stuff, because that's where I have complete freedom. I do love the gardening as well, but I do find it a bit harder having to, because I work for myself, but it is still kind of working for other people in a way. And I have to have a schedule and talk with clients and everything. And which is great and gives me a lot more freedom. But the flower farming is definitely, I love it. I feel like I have so much freedom and can really just do what I want and do what makes me super happy, like sowing seeds and cutting flowers and everything.
Oh, I think, for people listening, that is, absolutely the goal of, where we want to get to in life. How can we navigate through our journey to have that feeling of like, you know what, I really enjoy what I'm doing and
Yes.
work isn't such a drag. So
Yeah.
let's maybe go back a bit. And could you, really interesting what you said there about how you've kind of moved out of where you grew up and that kind of change that you've been through. Could you talk us a bit about your early years, perhaps leading on to your university studies, because that was pretty different, right?
Yes, yeah. So before I was doing gardening, and when I moved out here, I was still studying. I was at university and I was studying astrophysics, physics with astrophysics. And I kind of thought it was what I always wanted to do, some kind of science subject. I kind of realize now it was a path that I was put on. Like it wasn't really what I wanted to do. Um, I was studying at Loughborough University, but I was doing it remotely. And I was in my final year and I'd done a placement. So it was like almost 4 years of this. And as I said, I had some problems with my family and I was doing my final year exams. And honestly, I felt like my world was falling apart around me. It was awful. I just remember being here, doing my exams, and I just couldn't focus. I was just suffering so much. And I'd already suffered through COVID, which was just an awful time for everyone. And I was doing master's applications. I really thought that that was the path I was going to be on, like master's, PhD in astrophysics, and just being in academia. And I had an interview with Cambridge, and I was so pleased. And I thought my application was really good. And then I had the interview, and it went super badly. I just realized I was so unprepared. I don't want to do this, because when you think of astrophysics, or maybe more so astronomy, you think, oh, looking at through telescopes, looking at the stars, oh, it's so beautiful, looking at the moon. It's, from my experience looking at like the actual projects for masters, it's all like computer based, like coding and programming, which I can't do and also kind of find really boring. I just realized something is really wrong here. This isn't what I want to do. I'm suffering so much. And so I ended up looking into it, and I took a leave of absence. And I didn't realize that was an option for me. I hadn't ever thought about it at all, but I ended up just doing it. And it was so scary because it was like the biggest decision I'd ever really made for myself. And I ended up just extending the leave of absence as much as I possibly could. It ended up being like a year and a half maybe. And I ended up dropping out. And in that time, I needed something to do. I had to work, obviously, to make an income. I started working at a garden centre, and I worked there for like 2 days because I realised it was like a 0 hours contract and they hadn't been honest about it. But I was just trying to find what I wanted to do. I started working at a stables to be around horses because that's really lovely when you're suffering. And then George, my boyfriend, encouraged me. I had already wanted to do it, but I was too nervous, to put out an advert on Nextdoor. It's kind of like a neighborhood website for your local area. I just put out an advert saying that I'm a keen young gardener. I'd love to help out any way that I can. I started off charging £10 an hour, which is so low for a gardener. Just helping out weeding, just so those boring jobs that people don't want to do. And I got so many requests because everyone wants a £10 an hour gardener. I had like 50 people message me or something. And that's like the beauty of being self-employed. I picked my favorites and I just started
Brilliant.
working. So I started working as a gardener, and then I realized how much I love growing things, and especially flowers, and just picking a bunch of flowers that you've grown and giving it to someone as a gift is just the nicest feeling, and so personal as well. And I found out about flower farming, and I just kind of went from there, really. So that's my journey.
Amazing. Amazing. That's so exciting. If you don't mind, I wanted to hear a bit more about you talked about how much you were kind of suffering, particularly during your studies, that you realized weren't aligned into what you actually wanted to do. And I wondered if you could tell us a bit more about your thoughts and feelings during that time, if you wouldn't mind
No, of
delving in a bit
course.
more.
I can tell you, I'm totally open to talk about it from how I understand it now, because obviously like your perspective on things changes. At the time, I don't think I realized that something was necessarily wrong, because I feel like I've just lived being anxious, kind of like not my whole life, but my whole teenage life, definitely. And looking back now, I was just in lectures and I just felt like I was paralyzed with anxiety. The subject is hard and I did okay, but in lectures, they would just start talking and I don't know what it was, because I was completely capable of doing it, but I would just get so scared and I would lose track, and then I'd panic even more. And I was so scared of someone finding out. I guess that's just imposter syndrome, isn't it? Someone finding out like, oh, you don't know what you're doing. Like just being singled out in front of everyone, which is an awful feeling and just not true, because everyone in some way has their own anxieties, and everyone is probably completely lost by the lecturer who's talking about cosmology or something, or no matter the subject, maybe. But yeah, just looking back, I was so anxious all the time, and I just felt like I was underwater. I would get behind with the lectures and coursework and things like that, and no matter what I did, I couldn't get on top of things, and I was just struggling so much. And I feel like I could have done it. I could have finished it. A lot of people told me to do it. Just go back for the last year. It's just a year. You've already done this much. Um, and it also feels so crazy to drop out in your last year. I think a lot of people would say that's not a good decision, but I just wasn't happy. That's it. I just thought fuck this. I'm serving someone else here. I don't want to do this anymore. it's just making me depressed. But also going back for another year, you know, that's another year of student loans that I don't want to add to the bill. That's already massive. And so, yeah, unfortunately, looking back at most of my uni time, I just think about how anxious I was. And I also really struggled to make friends while I was there. So I was just so lonely too. I know people can have a really good uni experience, but I just didn't, me personally.
Thank you for sharing that. And I think it's really important for people to hear that, because there'll be lots of people that will feel the same, that
Yeah,
have maybe started their journey at uni. Because when you have to decide what you do at uni, you're so young. And I often look back and think, how are you supposed to know what you want to study for 3, 4 years, or even forever,
yeah,
at that point in your life? And
I
I
know.
think a lot of people will be feeling like, oh no, this isn't actually what I want to do anymore,
Yeah,
and will feel stuck. And I
yeah,
think hearing a story like yours, where you had the strength to actually
yeah,
quit,
yeah.
it's actually a real strength to be able to make that decision. I think that will
Thank you.
really be empowering for people.
Thank you. Yeah, I completely agree. But you know, it starts before then. It starts, you know, picking A levels, picking GCSEs. You're a teenager.
Absolutely.
You can't. Maybe some people do, but to me personally, I just feel like I couldn't have known. I'm still grateful for the journey that I went on, of course, but yeah, it starts so early. Um, and yeah, dropping out, I kept putting it to the back of my mind because it's a huge decision and I didn't know what to do, so I just avoided it for however long I could. Maybe it was a year and a half or something. And funnily enough, when I actually dropped out, I was at a client's house gardening, and I think it was a lovely day or something. And I got this email through on my phone, and it was from Loughborough, and it said, you know, you've basically run out of time. You need to decide now. And I just wrote out this email and I said, I've decided I don't want to return for my studies. And it took me like a minute. And so and I just sent the email and I was like, I'm done now. This is done. And I just went back to gardening. And I just thought this crazy like build up has just led to me just quickly. I just wrote this email in like a minute, and I dropped out, and it just seemed so kind of small after all. Such a hard decision, but it actually felt so kind of easy at the end, which is weird.
Yeah. And on your in your personal life, were you still with your family at this stage, or was that all happening as well at the same time?
That was happening during my exams. And I'm currently estranged from my family because of all the stuff that was going on.
Okay.
So that was kind of the reason why I felt like my life was falling apart. Um, and that all stopped kind of summer of 2021, and I sort of went my own way. And so the dropping out, that was just me on my own. I spoke to George and his family about it, but it was really just me, which is probably one of the reasons why it felt a lot easier, because I was really just doing what I wanted, um,
Yeah.
from taking that leave of absence, and my life just changed completely. But it's like the first time I've ever really felt in complete control of my life.
Uh, and that's so important, isn't it, to feel like you are in control?
Yeah,
Because when we feel like we lose control, I feel like that's when we can start to feel kind of a lot more of that anxiousness and
yeah,
and uncertainty around where our life's going.
yeah.
Um, but thank you for sharing that. And what have been some kind of key highlights and milestones along your career along the way?
For my gardening career, I'd say raising my hourly rate, because I started at £10 an hour and then I just slowly built it up from there. Not everyone's always happy with that, but it meant a lot to me because I was like, okay, well, I really start to value myself now, and my skills and what I actually provide to my clients, it matters. And I still really struggle with self-confidence and things like that, but definitely raising my rate um, overall. And with my flower farming business, it's probably starting doing the markets. In my first year, which was not last year, the year before, I grew quite a bit, but I was so nervous and I didn't really know what I was doing. I was really just learning the ropes, and I had these flowers and I was kind of too scared to do anything with them. I had like one order for a little jar of flowers, which was actually one of my gardening clients, and then I made up some jars and I took them into a cafe nearby. And that was all I did. But last year I started doing markets. I do some of the farmers markets in the Hampshire area. And I was also invited to do the Chiswick flower market, Chiswick in West London, which is funnily enough
Amazing.
where I'm from.
You've gone full circle a bit.
Yes, literally. It's a new flower market. It started in 2020 and it's really amazing. It's so busy and they do a lot to give back to the community. And it's always fantastic. It's such a busy day. So I actually have my first, I'm going there tomorrow at the time of recording, obviously. And I go there the first Sunday of every month. And it will be my first market of the year. So definitely starting to do the markets. I also
How was your first one? When you first did it,
um
how was that?
it was nerve-wracking. I stayed up so late. I was preparing the whole day before. I didn't eat anything. I was just running on pure adrenaline. I had George with me. He's almost like my business partner, really. He had his own fashion brand and he did markets selling his clothing. So, and he's also just so confident and such a people's person anyway. So he was like guiding me in a way, which I'm so grateful for because I just kind of want to hide away. It encourages me to be at the front and talk to people and like give out leaflets and things like that. But I was so nervous and it went well. I had my tulips, which I'll be selling now. And I sold out of my tulips. I was so upset because no one wanted my daffodils. But I was upset on the day, and then I took it as like, well, that's a sign that I need to do something differently for next time. But yeah, it was so nerve-wracking. Um, yeah, my first market.
And so you've now grown from doing that to how many markets do you think are you doing throughout the year now?
So last year I think it was about 8 markets. And this year I've currently booked in for 30 markets. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. So I'm going to be doing on average, that's like one a weekend. There's some where it's um two on a weekend, so one on a Saturday and one on a Sunday. So I'm going to be completely exhausted. I'm going to have to find a way to really balance that with my gardening business because that's how I make most of my income. But hopefully if the markets do well, then that will change a bit. But yeah, I've booked in for 30 markets. A couple of them are like festivals where it's going to be a lot bigger. Um, so fingers crossed that all works out. It is a bit difficult because, it's all dependent on me taking care of all these seedlings and planting them out at the right time and then
What you
them
grow.
flowering at the right time. It's really dependent on that and nature too. So we'll definitely see. But yeah, big growth from last year, literally.
Amazing. And what's helped that growth?
That's a good question. I think seeing how people responded to the flowers last year, I had at the Chiswick Flower Market, I had a few returning customers, which was amazing. And they had great things to say too about, how long the flowers lasted and things like that. And then also when the Chiswick Flower Market started going well, they asked me if I wanted to keep coming, and I said yes. But at that point, it was kind of too late I had already grown what I had grown. I couldn't really grow any more, if that makes sense. I couldn't
Sure.
start things. It was too late. So I only bought what I had with me to the markets, which was sometimes like 10 bunches. And I'd sell out by like midday, which is fabulous, but I needed more. um, so it was me running out of flowers, seeing, oh, people actually want to buy my product. People like it. So it was mainly that, I think. And just being excited. I mean, I love flowers. I love buying seeds. I can't stop. So any opportunity, any reason to to do more of that, it's fine by me.
I can see it in your energy, like the way that you come across when you're talking about it. You literally come alive and you're so
Thank
smiley and
you.
it's just
Thank
such a
you.
warm, exciting energy. So I can only imagine that if I met you at a flowers market and you were talking to me about your flowers, how could I not buy them from
Thank
you?
you. That's really nice. That shows me that that I'm doing something right. That something good is happening, because you get in your head and it's like
Absolutely.
you struggle with the confidence and everything like that. But I'm obviously doing something right if that's how it's coming across. So thank you.
Absolutely. And I know that George is very good and specialized in his social media world. So
Mhm.
how has that helped? Have you done much on socials for Bella's Blooms?
I have a bit more this year. Last year I wasn't doing so much. I'm quite a private person. I don't really
Yeah.
like posting on social media. Probably partly like an anxiety thing, like thinking no one's going to care. But it really is so important. Last year, George did a bit for me on my TikTok, and he made a good video about, about my uni experience and dropping out and about my flower farm now. And I had a customer come and say that she saw me on TikTok. And I guess something just clicked for me in that moment. It works, there will be people who are in the areas where you sell your product or your flowers who will see it, and they'll find out about you, and they will want to become a customer and buy something from you. So I realized that it's important. And so recently I've been trying to learn more about, like trending audios and things like that. And I've learned a bit about how to do video editing. I'm trying my best, but it has already worked. My engagement has gone up quite well, which I'm really pleased about. And, fingers crossed that translates into customers. But even if it doesn't,
Yeah.
I'm still happy to share my journey with people. So I'm definitely doing more on social media. But yeah, it's all thanks to George.
I agree with you about the kind of nervousness around it, and when you
Mhm.
don't really want to put yourself out there. Like I've
Yeah.
definitely been the same. Like I
Yeah.
know that there's no point in me having a podcast if I haven't got listeners, but I also feel terrified of like recording myself and knowing what to actually put on socials. It's such a
Yeah.
minefield and ever changing
Yeah.
so quickly now as well, isn't it?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. But I think I remember seeing a TikTok once of this lady just saying, just post the video, just say the thing. Like, I watch the most random videos on TikTok, but I still watch them, just post a video. And it's so true, you just have to do it. And sometimes I post a video and I think this is going to do rubbish, and it actually does really well. It's like one that I've put barely any effort into. And then ones that you spend more time on, they get lower engagement, but it just happens like that, and you just have to keep going, really.
Yeah, I think it's a consistency, isn't it? And you
Yeah.
must have also felt that in your business. There must be challenges along the way that can make you feel like, oh God, am I doing the right thing? But yeah, what challenges have you faced along this journey?
um the most common one, it sounds stupid, but is animals. Like, I have to deal with animals eating my crops. So we're in a field here, and I love the wildlife. I really do. I love seeing the deer and the pheasants and the partridges, but if I just leave the flowers out in the open, they're gone. The tulips, which is kind of quite an expensive crop to grow, the deer just decimate them. And so
Oh,
they've got netting up all around, but even they still get in. And that's bad, that's your crop, that's your, like, your business. So I've had to learn how to deal with that, and that's still ongoing, absolutely, but that's a massive thing. And then also probably money as well,
mm,
because I pay for the business myself, and I use the money that I have from my gardening business, and also, of course, any income I get from the flower farming business. But that's only seasonal, so from maybe like March, April through to October. So money is definitely one of the biggest issues. But saying that, the business is in its kind of first or second year, so it takes time to really build things up. Um, but at the moment, it's like I'm really putting my everything into it. But because I care so much, so yeah.
I completely didn't think about the seasonality of your work. So that must be really tough, kind of maintaining yourself through those winter months.
Yes, it is, and because the gardening business also declines a little bit too. Um,
Of
a lot of
course.
clients keep me on, but some people just say, "Oh, I'll see you in spring," which is a bit hard. Um, so yeah, you have to kind of think of contingencies and things like that, which I'm working on. I don't have it figured
Yeah.
out by any means, but hopefully it will get easier as time goes on
Mm.
and I learn more too. Yeah.
Yeah, and you got to remember you're doing it on your own. Like it's a
Mhm.
lot, and
Yes.
um, and to not have necessarily, obviously you've got a really strong sort of support from George and his family, but not having someone that's really in your day to day to kind of, you know,
Yeah,
bounce off of, it must
yeah,
be a lot and a lot of pressure to be managing all of this on your own.
yes. That is also something that I struggle with. For like a more practical side, but also it's really nice working with someone. I'm
Mm.
alone most of the time when I'm gardening and flower farming, so I do get a bit lonely sometimes, but also, I've given myself so much work to do. And this year I've really scaled up the amount of things that I'm growing, and I'm so excited, but I also know that I'm the one that has to do all of this, and I feel a lot of pressure on me from
Mm.
myself. One day I would definitely love to bring someone into the business, someone who can work with me out in the field. I would really love that, but it's not feasible right now. But one day, definitely, I would love to do that.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I'm sure you'll get there.
Thank you.
And how do you approach overcoming some of these challenges personally?
Don't give up. I know that's so easy to say, but you know, I come to the field and I see that uh, a lot of my tulips have been eaten by the deer, and I just want to go and cry, honestly. But let yourself feel that emotion, obviously. Um, don't just kind of suppress it. But when you feel a bit better, try and think, okay, well, how can I figure this out? And just keep trying. I tried different types of netting and things like that, different types of clips to hold the netting up because it blows down in the wind. It's like Fort Knox up there now with the tulips. um, So it's a bit better, but you just have to keep trying and thinking of different ways and asking for advice or seeing how different people do it. I see a lot of different flower farmers on Instagram, and I saw one of them use like a scaffolding netting, that like green netting that they have in front of scaffolding on houses and stuff, I guess. And I asked her about it, and she said it was really good, and so I started using that. So seeing what other people do. Um, and I guess it is just kind of a common thing with money when you're in a new business, unless you maybe have funding or something like that. There's probably a good chance that you're going to be kind of grinding yourself quite hard and not um kind of skimping on things in your day-to-day life to put more money into the business,
Mm.
and that should hopefully pay off down the line. But just, I guess, just try and remember why you're doing it. And for me, that looks like a Pinterest board, especially during winter when it's so bleak. It looks like a Pinterest board full of flowers and all the varieties of flowers that I'm growing this year. Or it looks like spending so much time with my box of seeds and just looking through them all the time. It sounds crazy, but I guess just try and remember why you're doing it when it gets hard. And it should get better. Yeah.
It feels like it's also really important to be kind to yourself through this as well, to know that, you know, you are going to get setbacks, there are going to be tough times, but, you know, you've got to kind of also take knowledge of where you've come from as well and kind of how far you've come.
Yeah, and that's something that I'm really bad at, honestly, seeing
Yeah.
how far I've come. I try and um I try and I try and work on that and look back at like photos and things like that. But seeing my journey over the past few years um is 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 massive what I've done. I'm I hope I'm not coming across as bragging, but it really is what I've achieved. But I don't, in like the day to day, I don't really think about that. I don't see that. So I need to try and remember um how far I've come. Yeah, absolutely.
And based on your experiences, what advice would you give to listeners who are maybe aspiring to pursue a career or passion similar to yours, or perhaps are also at that crossroads at uni where they think this isn't what I want to do? Any advice that you would share?
I'll start with that kind of crossroads at uni. That one's a bit harder. Um, it really depends because there's so often there's pressures from from other places, from external places like
Yeah.
family or school or something. And I never knew that there was another option that wasn't going to uni. But there are so many options. Obviously, it depends on the field, but you don't have to go to uni. You don't need a degree, really, unless you're like a scientist or something. But really try, I guess. And I know it's so hard because I was completely unaware. But if you're really unhappy, that might be a signal that maybe you aren't kind of like living authentically, not intentionally. I'm not saying that people are being inauthentic, but doing what you really want. And I listened to your episode yesterday about when you're feeling a bit stuck and you just kind of write down, I can't remember the order, but it was like write down things maybe you care about and things that make you happy. And I think that is a really good way of doing it. What really does make you happy? But maybe you don't know that right now, and it sometimes is so hard. But also, you don't have to just end up there because it's a journey. Will I be doing this 20 years from now? I have no idea. I can't say that. But right now I'm doing it and it makes me so happy. So you don't have to have the end goal, but it's more just maybe about being fulfilled as you can be at the time. And hopefully having a good support system will help you figure it out, but it is hard. I wish I could give people the answers, but it wasn't easy. It was a long journey of feeling very distressed at times and really scared too. And I'm thankful for it working out the way it did, but I had to make some really scary decisions, definitely. So I guess that's what I can say about that. Advice I'd give to maybe people who want to start flower farming is, most people say it when you see these internet blogs of like 20 things I knew in my first year flower farming. The number one is how hard it is, and it is hard work. It really is. But it's worth it when you have the product, and it's different as well because you start in like February, March, you start sowing your seeds. You don't really get a return on that until maybe like June, July. So you have to put in that hard work for a few months, and then it comes and it literally flourishes, and you're like, wow, this is why I've been doing it. So just keep putting in that hard work, really. Other things, there's so many resources out there. There's so many people giving advice. There's so many, good resources about what you can do. But probably the main thing I'd say is just try it. So just try things if you're stuck. And maybe it will really reward you. Yeah.
I'm so fascinated by your world. I mean, I actually was saying to my mum the other day, I said, Mum, I wish I took more notice of you and Nan all those years in our
Oh,
garden, because my
yeah.
Nan and Mum have always, from the minute it's possible to be outside in the garden to the minute it's not in the year,
Yeah.
they always have been so busy in the garden, making it look pretty, planting flowers, doing
Yeah.
this, doing that. And I
Yeah.
never took any notice. Like I
Yeah.
loved what they'd created. And I was like, oh, the garden
Yes.
looks nice, but I never
Yeah.
took
Yeah.
any notice. And now I've got
Yeah.
my own garden. I haven't
Oh,
got a
yeah.
clue. And I
Yeah.
literally said to my mum the other day, I was like, Mum, I so wish, I know it's different to what you do, but just that whole world of
Well,
like, oh, I
it's
wish I
similar.
listened and kind of took notice
Yeah.
of it.
Yeah.
I'm so fascinated with that
Yeah.
world that you're in.
That's lovely. Yeah, you just don't always notice these things.
And how much
But
effort goes into it.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. You just often take these things for granted, don't you? And I probably did the same growing up. Um, you just don't really know until you do it yourself. But everyone has to start from somewhere. Everyone has to
Yeah.
learn. And it's the same, I'd say, with the flower farming about just try it. I'd say gardening is really quite similar. Like just try it, and having a garden is like having like not empty, but like just having like a canvas where you can really
Yeah.
express yourself. And if there's anything I've learned from my clients is that everything is about trial and error. Right plant, right place. If it's not happy, it won't do super well. But if you really just trial and error, you can have the most beautiful garden. It will take time, but um, but anyone can do it. Anyone can do it. Yeah.
I love that. That's powerful. And I also love what you said earlier on about specifically around not knowing your end goal and being kind of content in where you are at the moment. And I think
Yeah.
that's so important. And I think we often are paralyzed to do something or create action in trying something different because we're wondering if it's going to be the thing that we're supposed to do forever. And
Yeah.
actually recognizing that, hey, I might do this for a year or two,
Yeah.
5, whatever, but I'm
Yeah.
gonna, this is what I need to be doing right now. It doesn't mean that things
Yeah.
can't change again.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's something maybe a lot of us grew up thinking is I'm on this path and it will be like this and I won't ever change my career. Well, that doesn't happen a lot.
Yeah.
And your passions might change, your circumstances might change. To me personally, I think just doing what makes you happy is best. Obviously, you have to make an income and a livelihood and things like that.
So, what are some of your goals and aspirations for the future then, for maybe both your professional world
Mhm.
and or your personal?
Hmm. For my professional world, I I'm continuing on with the markets. I'm hopefully going to do a lot more this year. I'd like to start doing weddings, doing wedding flowers. That's something that I'm really interested in doing. I think I need to take a course or something. I'd like to take one for my gardening too, because at the moment I'm just completely self-taught. So a course for horticulture, but also arranging for wedding flowers, I'd love to do, because it's a really good way of expanding the business.
Yeah.
That's definitely a huge thing. Personally, um, just to keep growing, keep recovering, which I'm still doing from the really difficult time that I had. I'm in therapy, and I'm always learning more about mental health and psychology, which I'm really passionate about. And it helps me understand myself and other people who are in my life. Um, and just keep being. I know this is like really vague. I'm sorry if this is not like the goals you're looking
Not
for,
at
but just
all.
keep trying to be as authentic as I can to myself and my business, really, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. And thank you for being so real and honest because I think that's what we need to hear. You know, we don't need all the answers and every individual journey is different, but just kind
Yeah.
of hearing your story, someone will feel less alone. And I think that's the goal.
Yeah.
Even if that's just one person. And I really, you know, something I'm really passionate about as listeners will know throughout my episodes and my story is mental health. And I think you just being open about that there it is so helpful. And would you mind sort of sharing how therapy has helped you? Because I think a lot of people still have a lot of stigma around
Mm,
therapy. There's
yeah.
also always that thing of you have to be in crisis or illness to be able to
Yeah.
seek help, such as therapy. Could you
Yeah.
help shed a light and perhaps how we can, you know, change that stigma?
Probably the first thing is to maybe being open about I'm in therapy, and I will be for a long time, because I my family situation is quite difficult. Like my dad left when I was younger, just a lot of things that have happened throughout my life, and I'm okay with that. I'm going to be in therapy for a while. It's obviously expensive, but it's necessary. It's completely necessary. I think that everyone should be in therapy. I know it's difficult because it is expensive and it's not accessible to everyone, which is so unfortunate. But um, everyone, everyone is just walking through life, reacting and dealing with things and living through their own lens of what has happened to them in the past. And that can make for really fantastic, amazing people who are really self-aware, but it can also make for people who don't understand maybe that they are not treating people as well as they maybe could because they're not aware of it. They don't know. It's easier to block off those feelings, um, and kind of not acknowledge them because that brings in pain, unfortunately, dealing with hard things. but to be self-aware and then to have the most kind of fulfillment out of life, in my opinion, is just wonderful. And to really get the most out of your relationships and maybe your job too, and just yourself. I wish everyone could have that. And to me, I think therapy is it's not the only way, but it's probably the best way, with, licensed mental health clinicians who really know what they're doing. I'm just in awe of my therapist all the time. She knows exactly what's happening, I think. And I wish she could tell me, but she can't, because she has to let me do it myself. But she knows what's going on. She's dealt with way worse than what I'm giving her. And I think therapists are incredible. George is trained to be one. I think in another life I would have trained to be one. Maybe down the line, that's why I say maybe I won't be flower farming forever. Maybe I can be a therapist flower farmer. But therapists really are incredible. And yeah, there still is a stigma, unfortunately. I think it's getting better, but it's hard. There's no shame in going to therapy. There's no weakness in it at all. And it makes me so sad that people feel that way. Working on yourself and really, really acknowledging, maybe I'm not perfect and maybe there are ways I can improve. I think that's so powerful and really strong. And I really hope it just keeps changing and people can be more open about their struggles. And yeah, I could probably talk for hours about this.
Me too. I actually, just hearing you say that, I feel exactly the same. And I've been in therapy before, but I also work for an organization that we offer therapy to individuals and also businesses. So my day to day is literally talking to employers around how they can offer really kind of contemporary therapy access for their people. And I think it is, I agree, everyone should be in therapy, but equally there are barriers to that. And I think in my world, I think employers have a real unique position to also provide their people access that they might not have been able to afford otherwise. And yeah, I think it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And I think if we all did it, we'd all feel that little bit lighter.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
So thank you so much for sharing that. And Isabel, where can people find you?
So
not literally in your house, but
yeah, come here. My flower farm is called Bella's Blooms. It's Bellers. That's what George's dad calls me, Bella's. So it's Bella's Blooms. That's me on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, LinkedIn, I think too. I'm mostly on Instagram. It has everything about my markets and what I'm doing. And I have a website too, actually, bellasblooms.co.uk, I think. We're working on it, but it's there. But mostly on Instagram and TikTok, I'd say. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, for listeners, make sure you give Isabel a follow and check out her page. It's beautiful. And I'm really excited to keep continuing and following your journey as well, Isabel. And thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I think you've given such a refreshingly real story around your journey, which will give people not only a sense of courage to think differently about their own path, but also helping people just feel that bit less alone, because I imagine there's just so many people going through their 20s at the moment that feel so lost and not sure if they're on the right path. And particularly as COVID also came into that, so for those that were studying and trying to figure that out, that was even harder for them. And I think just showing that, yes, it's not going to be easy and it's going to be difficult, but it's amazing what you can achieve if you really listen to what's inside, and if you really do try and be authentic and live that authentic life that you mentioned. So this has been inspiring, to say the least, and I'm sure listeners will absolutely love listening and seeing you.
Thank you so much. I really hope so. Even if my story just resonates with like one person, that would just be amazing. So thank you so much for giving me this opportunity and being so kind and welcoming and lovely to speak to. And also, I think it's amazing that you've started your own podcast. I think that's amazing too. You're putting yourself out there, which is so scary. So thank you so much. And yeah, 20s and 30s is a hard time. It's scary. It's tough. Adulting is hard, but you can do it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'd love to have you on again.
Thank you
And
so
for listeners
much.
at home, and make sure you tune in and share this episode with your friends, family, colleagues. You can find the Self-Service podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Make sure you leave a review on the episode so we know what you think. And give us a follow as well. You can find me on Instagram on @theselfservice_, and make sure you tune in next time to discover the power of self-service.